There's
All right, so hello everyone. A very warm afternoon to all of you. Welcome to the YouTube channel of Get Set Law. I'm your verbal ability mentor, Sanjana ma'am, and let's solve a couple of more questions from the English language section of CLAT. This is another weekly practice session. We have done several sessions previously, so it's definitely going to help you if you go and watch those sessions as well. In every session, we're trying to bring as many questions of a similar nature of the questions that are asked in the CLAT examination. So a quick check, let's see who all are joining us, and then we'll begin with today's practice session. It would be on logical reasoning, two passages again, with each passage having six questions. Just a couple of more seconds, and then we'll begin. Some questions here would be easy, some questions might be tricky, but for the most part, I'm trying to keep the level of difficulty the same as that of CLAT 2024 and 2025, which is on the easier side. Because for both these years, the paper was actually very easy on the whole, especially for the English language and logical reasoning section. So I think I'll begin just about now. We'll focus on the first passage now. Again, it's entirely up to you. If you want to read, you can read the entire passage, provided you read it within 2 to 2.5 minutes. Okay. So this passage is essentially talking about, and just follow how I like to read the passage. Okay. So it's something called NCF, which is a new curriculum framework, right? So this is a much needed reject. Now, the author is expressing appreciation for it in a way, because the author says it's a much needed thing here, right? Why? Because it seeks to fill the gaps which were observed in the school education system over the years and align with good global practices. All right, so we have two pointers that this new curriculum is going to serve. The first is to fill the gaps observed in the school education system and to align with good global practices. That's the second purpose, right? Now, there are some glaring shortcomings that the author was able to see in the current framework of assessment of the students' capabilities, right? And that glaring problem is that it promotes rote learning or learning things by rote, right? And the other problem is that it is entirely based on the performance of the students in the annual examination rather than on the holistic development and progress. So that's also a bother that the author finds in the current framework of assessment. So the first issue is that it's based on rote learning. The second issue is that they just have one examination based on which they determine the students' capabilities, right? So this, in a way, has also turned a stressful exercise for the examinees. All right. So therefore, accordingly, the new norm envisaging the conduct of board examinations twice a year. So this is a part of the new norm, right? Conducting the exams twice a year. And the fact that the students are in a position to opt for the better score. So this is definitely good news, right? It holds significant value. And the policy's ultimate aim. Now, this is exactly what I mean when I say focus on the keywords. There's a subjective used, ultimate aim. So through a plain reading of this itself, you will understand what the passage is trying to say, right? So the ultimate aim is to provide exams to the students on demand, right? Which is laudable. So author, like I said, without even reading the word laudable, I've just mentioned that he is appreciating this, right? It would enable them to take the test whenever they feel ready for it. And therefore, the scores would thus reflect their true competencies rather than being just a regurgitation of the study material learned. Regurgitation is rather than relying on rote learning, which is the case currently, right? And the other good thing about is that it blurs the rigid lines between arts and sciences, curricular and extracurricular activities, and vocational and academic streams by allowing the students to choose any set. So students are at liberty. They can use their discretion to choose any set of subjects they are keen on learning, right? It's just that there's a small problem. Why? Because there is a contrasting word, however, used. That the study of the two languages has been made mandatory, at least one Indian. All right. Let's read further. It remains to be seen how the transition to the new framework pans out. It entails a lot of additional work for the teachers. Now, the author is expressing just a minor concern here, which is that it might just have a lot of additional work for the teachers and other staff members because you're supposed to prepare new textbooks also, right? And a comprehensive test item bank made for use in framing test papers using suitable software. So towards the end of the passage, the author highlights some minor concerns, which, if we're able to address them, will help us tide over the problem, right? A very, very small paragraph. And if you want, you can just read this within 30 seconds also, if you're already, reading regularly. Having said that, let's focus on the questions one by one. All right. So the first question here, which is, what is the primary goal of the new curriculum framework mentioned in the passage, right? Which is to increase the number of annual board examinations, to eliminate the need for board examinations, to align with the global educational practices and address shortcomings. The best option choice here, we don't even have to discuss it. It's that easy, right? Because while explaining the passage, I had already highlighted the purpose that is being served by the new curriculum framework. This makes C the correct option choice. The second question, why does a passage praise the concept of conducting board examinations on demand? So, what purpose does it serve? Does it reduce the workload of teachers? This is something which is not given in the passage. Does it eliminate the need for any board examination? See, nowhere in the passage is it mentioned that you have to do away with board examinations. It's just that we should be able to increase the frequency so that students are able to choose an exam of their choice at will. So B is out. It allows students to showcase their true abilities. This is what it will lead to ultimately, making C the correct option choice for this question as well. It cannot be D, because like we cannot really choose something that promotes rote learning when the passage or the author argues otherwise. All right. So C is the correct option for this question. Look at the third question. And if you want, students, you could also let me know the answers here in the live chat as well. So, what is the likely reason behind the Ministry of Education's decision to introduce biannual board examination? So, what is the likely reason? Why do we want to conduct the board examinations twice? Is it to increase the workload on teachers? Absolutely not. To reduce the burden on students by allowing them to choose the better score. Now, understand, all of this is explicitly given, which is very much in tandem with the purpose of this. So make B the best option choice to eliminate the need for annual board exams. Like I said, and this is repetitive information, right? We don't have to do away with board examinations. We just have to increase the frequency, right? To increase the emphasis on rote learning, again, the contrary has been argued, right? We don't want to promote rote learning, right? So B here is the best option choice. Take a look at the fourth question. Now, which factor could potentially undermine? Now, this is a weaken question, right? Undermine the success of the NCF's implementation. So, which of the following will weaken the success? Now, if you remember, in order to solve this question, firstly, focus on the weaknesses that this framework might have, which is given in the last paragraph, which is about, teachers need to be able to adapt to the new system. Teachers' workload might increase, right? So, if this doesn't get addressed, it can definitely undermine the potential of this framework's implementation. That helps you mark option A as the best option choice. Availability of comprehensive test item banks. This is something which is slightly secondary to option A. If the teachers themselves are not able to adapt to the new system, how do you think we're going to implement this? Ultimately, it has to be the teachers who are going to facilitate, right? So again, C is out because this is not given, and this too is not given because it is anyway blurring the rigid lines between extracurricular and curricular activities. So option D is not really a bother. Option A is, and this definitely weakens the success of the framework's implementation. A here is the correct option choice. The next question is, now you have to strengthen the idea that the new curriculum framework aims to create a more flexible and student-centered education system. Now, at what ways? Right. So if I'm able to choose that option, which will add some more credence to this idea, it will help us mark the correct option. The new framework introduces strict subject requirements. We want more of flexibility and less of strict subject requirements. So A is out. The policy emphasizes the regurgitation of study materials. Rote learning is something we don't want to promote, right? So it doesn't really support the idea. In fact, it weakens it, if at all. Students are allowed to choose their preferred subjects. And, this is really important. If they are allowed to choose their preferred subject, this, in a way, helps the framework create a more flexible and student-centric education system. Mark C is the correct option choice. D does not really strengthen this part, right? Best option choice, therefore, is C. Now, for this particular question, you might feel confused. You might think, ma'am, it could be D also. But no, it's not D, because you always focus on the requirement of the question, what the question is asking you to focus on, right? Which I've already highlighted here for you. And let's focus on the last question for this passage. And after this, we are going to focus on the next passage. Now, which of the following can be most reasonably inferred from the passage? Inference based questions reign supreme, whether in English language or logical reasoning. The NCF aims to shift assessment from memory recall to competency demonstration. And this actually is a great conclusion to draw from the information rendered in the passage, that we don't want to promote studying based on rote learning, but studying which is based on somebody reflecting his or her true capabilities, which is competency demonstration. Now, you might think, ma'am, these are really fancy words here. Nowhere are they used. Do we really have to mark them? If you're not sure, at least we can eliminate the rest of the options. The NCF primarily targets administrative reform. This part is definitely not given, hence out. The twice yearly board exams will lower academic standards. If anything, we're trying to up the ante here. We're trying to improve academic standards. So this runs contrary. The mandatory study of two languages restricts student choice. This again is not a problem. The best option choice here is option A, right? So if you feel that there is like an idea which is not explicitly given, at least be in a position to eliminate the rest of the options here. Okay, let's focus on the next passage. So this was the first passage here, and I think it is a full scorer. You cannot go wrong with any of the questions here. Easy to understand. The options framed are really easy, very brief, very crisp, very concise, right? So if such a passage does get asked in the examination, make sure that you're doing well there. And by well, I mean like score full marks here. We'll now take a look at the next passage. So this, I believe, is something you might have to read word for word, right? So essentially, again, but I will try to skim. Let's see if through skimming itself, we can still solve all the questions correctly, right? So, all right, there's a headline. Headline talks about thousands of emperor penguin chicks dying in a sea. Why? Because the fast ice broke out unusually early. Okay, and the author seems saddened and devastated, but he's not surprised. Maybe he's anticipating it. Maybe he just saw it coming, right? So, this is a region where this dreadful event occurred, has been one of the fastest warming areas on Earth. Okay. And as temperature records are being broken year after year, a catastrophe of this kind was a matter of time, which means the author already saw this coming. According to the author, this happening was inevitable because he could already predict that climate change is going to impact emperor penguins, right? For nearly 2 decades, scientists have developed models to predict the potential impact of raising temperatures to establish what the future would hold for these magnificent birds, right? Now let's read further, okay? Now, scientists warn that in the next few decades, the global emperor population, we're talking about the penguins here, will suffer significant losses, okay? Now, it seems that the future is now. The author here has studied the penguins for 30 years and he has never stopped marveling how they survive in an extreme hostile environment. Okay, so many adaptations in behavior, anatomy, physiology took thousands and thousands of years to evolve to enable them to breathe in the Antarctic winter, right? And let's read further. Wrapped in many layers of Antarctic clothing, ungainly stumbling across the ice, the author watches the emperors gracefully tobogganing over the snow ice. So now the author is just describing a scenario where, in a way, he's just expressing, appreciation for the fact that penguins, the emperor penguins, are able to adapt even despite these harsh conditions, right? And they are only each other to shelter from the vicious storms, right? So these perfect little penguins, little fluff balls of down, depend on the parents for warmth and food for the first 50 days of their lives. Most colonies occur on the land, fast sea ice that tended to provide a reliable breeding platform. Now, this information is really potent. That fast sea ice is important for them because it provides a reliable breeding platform, right? This fast ice is nothing but a thin layer on top of about 200 meters of icy cold dark water, right? Read further. At times, the ice moves, a reminder that this is nothing but a temporary refuge. Fast ice forms a discontinuous band around the continent and it covers up a certain area. In some places, it might persist for many years, but in many places, it disappears during summer because of warming, only to form again at the start of next winter. So suitable breeding area for emperors must have ice solid enough to support a colony by April, lasting at least until late December to rear chicks successfully. So fast ice or a suitable breeding area which is formed using solid ice is important. This is the conclusion that the author has arrived, and the author is also of the opinion that climate change can severely impact this because of temperatures rising, the ice would melt and it no longer will be able to provide refuge to the emperor penguins or the penguin chicks. That's it. That's all there is to the passage. There is some information here or there which I haven't read. We'll focus on it if there's a question on it, right? That's how you're supposed to read the passage also. Okay, let's focus on the questions one by one now. Central focus of the above passage. Good question. Look at the options. The challenges faced by scientists. See, we're not really bothered so much about the challenges that the scientists are facing in predicting climate change because they very easily have. The author here himself has been able to predict that bad things are going to happen. It's a catastrophe, nothing short of a catastrophe, right? So A is out. The tragic event of emperor penguin chick deaths due to ice breakup, which is what the passage started with, which is ultimately what the passage is, ending with also. So this is the best option choice. The adaptations of emperor penguins to the Antarctic environment is given in a small part, right? This is just to sort of strengthen the argument further, but it's more about the tragic event. The significance of fast ice as a breeding platform for penguins. This is again given more as a sub idea, but the central focus is on the tragic event, right? So B is the best option choice. For this particular question, I feel there's a possibility that a lot of you might be inclined towards option D also, right? But if option D had to be the central focus, we would talk in great detail about this, but it's not talked about in great detail, only like in a couple of sentences. So that's the idea you can use to determine a main idea. Look at the weightage it occupies in the passage, and therefore B is the best option choice. Look at question 8. Now, what can be inferred about the author's view on the emperor penguin chick deaths? Okay. A, the author was surprised by the news. No, actually, he was able to predict it beforehand. He was able to anticipate it. He saw the inevitable happening. The author has been anticipating such events due to climate change. There you have your correct option choice, right? And when you read something, in a very vigilant, attentive, focused manner, you will have the information on your fingertips already. You would never feel the need to go back to the passage. So, whenever you practice reading, whenever you solve several questions a day, this should be one of your goals, right? C says the author believes that ice breakup events are completely preventable now. If you can go back to the passage and find this, then good luck. But it's not given, right? So, option C is out. The author expects that emperor penguin populations will fully recover. Again, there's a quantifier. Secondly, this is not given in the passage, right? So, this too is out. B for Bombay is the best option choice. Question 9. Now you have a support slash strengthen the argument based question because logical reasoning. You have to strengthen the author's assertion about the impact of climate change on emperor penguins. Now, always, whenever you have a strengthen slash weaken based question, focus on the requirement of the question. Now, you have to strengthen the impact of climate change, that this is how severely destructive climate change can be for the emperor penguin population. Penguins have been shown to adapt quickly to changing environments. If that's the case, don't you think it actually weakens? If they can still adapt, right, then climate change is not going to worry them so much, right? So option A is out because it weakens instead of strengthening. Scientists have failed to accurately predict the effects of climate change. But in what way is it actually strengthening the impact of climate change? Before you mark B, before you think that B is the correct option, think again. In what way is this solidifying the impact of climate change? Right? So B is out. It's not a very bad option, but it's not that directly relevant also. Look at C. Fast ice provides a stable breeding platform for emperor penguins. Now, if this is the case, and if climate change is only worsening, fast ice will melt. And if fast ice will melt, penguins will no longer have an abode or a refuge, which means climate change can really impact them in this way if fast ice is so important for them. Now, this is a great question. You might think a little harder, thinking if C is directly strengthening it, but this is the best option choice. I've just explained it now. D says temperature records have remained stable over time. If this is the case, then climate change is definitely not going to impact them. So it doesn't really strengthen the argument. So the best option choice here becomes option C, right? This is a great question. I feel like when you're having a paucity of time and you just want to solve something hastily, you might end up goofing up here, but you shouldn't, right? So be a little slow while solving strength and weaken based questions. The next question, now you have to weaken the author's argument about the impact of climate change on emperor penguins. So, emperor penguins have been migrating to more suitable breeding areas, but how is this telling us anything about the impact of climate change? It's the same question, but this time we have to weaken it. The climate change does not really impact them so much. So, A is out. The population of emperor penguins have been steadily increasing as per the report. So, despite climate changing, despite the changes happening for the worse, the population of the penguins are only increasing, which actually tells us that good or bad, climate change is not impacting the population. And therefore, option B directly weakens this, and that makes B the best option choice. Rapid warming in a region does not necessarily cause ice breakup. This is not as potent as option B because we have to assess the impact on emperor penguins. Okay, so C is out. Even if it does not necessarily cause ice breakup, it might still cause some amount of breakup, right? So this is not a very substantive option choice. It's not helping us to fully determine that the impact of climate change on emperor penguins is almost negligible. So C is out. D says climate change has catastrophic effects on penguin habitats. You already know this strengthens it, it doesn't weaken it. So best option choice is option B. Again, these two questions are great. There is a possibility for you to find these two questions tricky. The next question, now it's more of an application based question. What course of action would the author most likely recommend based on the information given in the above passage? Implement stricter regulations on penguin research to prevent disruptions. Essentially, what disruptions are we talking about? You see how option A is nothing but something which is just given out of context. So, this is out. Focus on developing new technologies to prevent ice breakup. But is ice breakup all that really determines if the population is going to remain intact? Right. So, and what new technologies? Are we even saying anything about it? Even an iota of discussion about new technologies? No. Increase efforts to educate the public. Now, public awareness per se is not going to solve the problem, right? So, this again is a very weird option choice. You can eliminate C. We're left with D, which says address the root cause of climate change to protect penguin habitats. We cannot prevent ice breakup directly, unless you take care of the climate change situation. So if that is something that gets addressed, then automatically ice breakup can also be prevented. So that makes D the best option choice. To me, this is a great question. All right. Look at the 12th question. Now, based on the passage, which of the following statements would the author most likely disagree with? Now, be very careful. It says disagree with. The recent deaths of emperor penguin chicks were completely unexpected and unpredictable. Absolutely the right option choice because no, they were not unexpected. The author had already anticipated this. This is a question which you can just mark quickly because the first option in itself is the correct option choice. Emperor penguins have evolved over millennia to adapt to the harsh Antarctic environment, definitely given, hence out. Stable fast ice is crucial, given, hence out. Rising global temperatures are contributing to habitat instability for emperor penguins. Again, this is voiced in the passage, hence out. The best option choice is option A. So, we're done with these two passages for logical reasoning. Hope you understood it. If you have any queries, let me know in the live chat. If you want more such practice sessions, let us know. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.